Good morning, everyone. I'm Avi Hersenberg, Head of Partnerships here at SmartSuite. Pleased to be joined today by Jacob Bank, CEO of Relay.app. Relay is a recent SmartSuite integration that we just launched with SmartSuite. Quite a few customers and partners already using it, and I must say, love it. We're excited to learn more about Relay app and learn more on how to get started and what can be done. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Jacob.
Sounds good. Let me share my screen. So before we dive into the demo, I just wanted to give everyone a very quick 5-slide overview of who I am and what Relay is. Avi, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So here's a brief introduction to me and to Relay. So I've spent my whole career working in productivity and collaboration tools. At one point, I thought I was going to be a professor of computer science and an AI researcher. And my research was on time management and why we procrastinate, why we overestimate how available we're going to be, why we underestimate how long things would take, and how you can build a tool, in our case, a digital calendar that helps people spend time on what's important to them. I ended up dropping out of my PhD to start my first company, which was an AI-powered digital calendar called Timeful. We were acquired by Google in 2015, and I spent the bulk of my career, 6 years at Google, as the product director for Gmail, Calendar, our developer platform, and a few other things, with Gmail being the central experience from my time at Google. And so when Avi and I were brainstorming topics that we thought would be useful for the SmartSuite audience, and in particular ways that SmartSuite and Relay could work together, we decided to focus on Gmail and workflows that we can automate on top of your email. And for the last 2 years, I've been the CEO of Relay. So what is Relay? Relay is a workflow automation tool. I know many in this audience are familiar with Zapier and Make.com, and Relay is an alternative to those. We let you create automated playbooks that connect all of your apps together. You can set a trigger, for example, when an incoming email comes in or when something changes in SmartSuite, and then you can create a number of actions, copying documents, updating information, sending emails, sending Slack messages, etc. And Relay is different from the other competitors in the space in 3 main ways. So I'll quickly show you the 3 key differentiators, and then each of those differentiators will appear in the demos that I'll show later. The first is we make it easy to have a human in the loop in your workflow. So we know that for many of these automated workflows, you often need human judgment for various reasons. You might need a person to approve something. You might need someone to make a decision. You might need someone to customize or input some data. And I'll show you some examples of that. The second is we make it easy to support multiplayer workflows. This is common in companies where maybe the sales team and the support team work in different tools or have different credentials and different access, and you want to create a playbook with multiple roles. I'll show you an example of that where you might want to send a personalized welcome email to a customer that's from a different person within your company, depending on who the customer is. If, for example, there's an existing relationship already with the customer. And the last point is we want to make it really easy to add AI to any automation without having to craft your own prompt or figure out which OpenAI API to call, but to do it directly in line. And I'll show you examples of all those. The last thing to note is we have a slightly different pricing model from Zapier and Make and others in the space. The philosophy of it is we want it to be simple and predictable so that you don't get surprised by your bill every month. And second, that we encourage you to use the product more and not less. And so you'll see in all of our pricing plans, both the free tier, the startup tier, and the unlimited tier, that we, especially in the startup and unlimited tier, we don't want to restrict the number of playbooks you use. We don't want to restrict the number of runs or automations or triggers you can call. We want you to get as much value out of Relay as possible. So if you're a heavy Zapier or Make.com user, you'll probably notice that this pricing is quite favorable. So with that, let's dive in and actually take a look at the product. Okay,
Awesome. And while you're diving in, I just wanted to mention to everyone, we're going to be taking live Q&A questions, live questions towards the end. And so if you have any questions, better to put them in the Q&A section versus the chat so we can keep track of what was answered and what wasn't. And so as Jacob is going along through this demo, please drop your questions and we'll try to get to all of them.
Great. Okay, so this is the Relay UI. As you can see, I'm a rather experienced user, so I already have a lot of playbooks. When you're a new user, you won't have any playbooks, and you'll see a big call to action to start a new playbook. Before I start a new playbook, I want to show you how you'll connect the various tools that you want to integrate within Relay. You'll go to Settings in the bottom left. You'll go to Your Integrations, and you'll see all of the apps that you want Relay to have access to. So in my case, I've already connected the Google Workspace products. I've connected Affinity. I've connected Asana. And most importantly, I'll scroll down. I've connected SmartSuite. So when you first sign up for Relay, you'll want to come to this page and connect Gmail, connect SmartSuite if you're doing any of the use cases that we show in the demo, and you'll go through a standard OAuth dialog flow that asks you to grant permissions. And it's critical that when you're connecting the Google Workspace apps, you check all the boxes, because otherwise you'll end up in a weird state where we have access to your account, but we don't have all the permissions we need to actually run the automations. Then, once you've connected your accounts, you can create a new playbook. And the demo I want to show in this case is one where you receive a new invoice, let's say from a vendor, over email, and you want to track all your invoices in SmartSuite, both to have a historical record of what you paid and to note any fluctuations in cost, for example. I created a very simple table solution in SmartSuite that has an invoices table. You can see the invoices table is very simple. It has a vendor name, it has the amount, it has the date of the invoice, it has the status of whether it was paid or unpaid, and then it has the attachments. In this case, there's an invoice attachment and a receipt attachment. And what I want to do is create a playbook in Relay that automatically gets invoices into this table in SmartSuite when a new invoice comes in over email. So let me show you step by step how you'd build that playbook. The first thing you need to do, as our kind of guided flow on the right tells you, is that you need to add a trigger. And in this case, the triggering event is going to be a new email received in Gmail. When I enter the trigger dialog for new emails that have been received in Gmail, I can decide to filter down to the subset of emails that are relevant for this playbook. In this case, I want to filter down to emails where the message contains the word invoice. Then down below, you can see in real time some of the historical emails that would have triggered based on these criteria. And so you can see here, I have a receipt from Sanity and an invoice from Linear that both contained the word invoice and therefore would trigger from this playbook. In this trigger output section, you can see for that particular email that would have triggered this workflow, what are the fields you'll have available? That you'll have attachments, you'll have the body, you'll have the labels, you'll have the reply to address, the send time, the sender email, et cetera. In this case, it was an email actually forwarded from me. And Katie at CollabAI-test is the demo account that I'm driving this use case with, in case you ever see Katie at CollabAI-test.co come up. So now I've set the trigger. I'm going to use this email from Linear as my example data as I kind of thread through the workflow. And what I want to do as a first automation is I want to create a record in the relevant SmartSuite table. So you can see I'm now in the automation editing experience for this create record automation. I can select a table from SmartSuite. And in this case, I'm going to select the invoices table. And then it gives me the opportunity to specify which fields I want to add to the invoices table. So first, I'll add that the status field is unpaid. Then I'll add for the date field, the date I actually want to pull out of the send time of the email. So I'll show you how you can reference the data from that email that triggered the playbook. So I'll hover over mail, and it'll show me only the fields that are relevant for a date, and I'll get the send time of the email. Now, the next two things I want to populate are the vendor name and the amount. But these are a little tricky because vendor name and amount are not structured fields that come for free in an email. They're things that we actually need to extract. And so now I'm going to show you how you can use AI extract to very easily pull out the vendor name and the amount of the invoice from the content of that email. So if I select vendor, and then I hit this plus button on the right, I'm going to go to AI extract. And I'm going to give a little hint, like I want to extract the vendor name. And in this case, I want to extract it from the body of the email. And then I want to do the same thing with the amount field. I want to, again, add AI extract. I want to extract the total in USD. And I want to extract it again from the body of the email. And then finally, I also want to store the invoice attachments in SmartSuite as well. I have this column in SmartSuite, which is a collection of files, and I can automatically pull the attachments from the email. I'm going to make this workflow a little fancier later, but let's just start with this basic one, which takes the incoming email in Gmail and adds the relevant record in SmartSuite with the vendor and the amount auto-extracted. When you have a playbook that you feel is ready to start testing, we have a built-in testing capability that you can see up here in the top right. And what that's going to let you do is select a historical email that would have triggered the playbook just to make sure everything is working right before you turn it on for new incoming emails. So in this case, I'm going to test the playbook with an invoice from Linear. I can actually go over to my email quickly and show you this invoice just so you get a sense of what it would look like. Pretty standard Stripe generated invoice. And I'm going to use this as the sample data for my test run. So I'm going to hit create test run. And now I've moved from the playbook editing view into the run view. And this shows a specific running instance of the playbook in the context of this invoice from Linear. Now I'm going to start the test run. And let's hope the demo gods are on my side. Okay, so as you can see, it was triggered manually in this case by me. And we were able to successfully create an invoices record with status unpaid, date December 13th. We correctly pulled out that the vendor name was Linear Orbit Inc. is their full incorporation name. We correctly pulled out that the amount was $120, and we got the invoice PDF. And then if I go over to SmartSuite, you can see I have an unpaid invoice from Linear for $120. So we passed the first test. But now, but now I don't want to leave that invoice unpaid forever. I would actually like to pay it. And so this is where human in the loop component can be really valuable, because maybe not all of your invoices on autopay are on autopay. You want someone in your finance department to review the content of the invoice and then manually pay it. So let me show you how you can add a human in the loop step to this workflow for someone to pay the invoice, and then we'll update SmartSuite accordingly once the invoice is paid. So let me go back to Relay. I'm going to just delete this entry because I'm going to reuse the same sample data for the next portion of the demo. So I'm going to go back to Relay. I'm going to go back to my playbook, and I'm going to add another step. And this step is going to be a manual step, which is a task. And we call it a blocking task because it means the playbook can't proceed until this task is done. And so in this case, we're going to assign it to me because I'm also the finance person. You know how it goes in small startups. And the task title is going to be to pay invoice. And you can add some instructions to the assignee of what they have to do. And so maybe I'll add a little money emoji, and I'll say time to pay the invoice. And again, I want to reference the relevant data. And I can now pull it out of the SmartSuite record. So I'm going to pay this vendor for, let me also get the amount out of it for this amount, and the email with the invoice, the email for reference can be found here. And here I'm going to linkify this because I don't want to have some like long email URL string. So I'm going to linkify here, and I'm going to make the destination URL the URL of the email that was sent to me. And so that's the manual task. And then after that manual task is done, I want to update the status of that SmartSuite record from unpaid to paid. So let me make an update record automation. The record I'm going to choose is the record that we had created in the first step of the playbook, and that's going to come up for you automatically. You could choose another record if you wanted to by adding a get step in front of it. And I want to update the status from unpaid to paid. And now that'll automatically save when I hit the X. And now let me test this again to see if it works end to end with the human in the loop. So I'll create another test run. I'll once again use the invoice from Linear. I'm going to start the run. And now let's say I'm going about my day in Slack. I'm DMing myself. I'm looking at this cookie banner channel. Oh, and I see Relay has asked me to do something. It's time, and so I'm getting a notification to do this task. You could get a notification in Slack. You could get a notification in email. You could, look at it in the Relay UI, whatever is the most natural workflow for your experience. But for most of our users, we see they like to get notified in Slack. And so here I have a notification in Slack that says it's time to pay the invoice with all the information I need to pay it. And I can click Mark as done directly from Slack. When I click Mark as done, and I go back to Relay, you'll see that the Relay workflow has completed. And when I go over to SmartSuite, you'll see that the invoice was updated to paid. I should have shown the intermediate step where at first it was unpaid and then it gets updated to paid, but you'll just have to trust me from the previous demo that it was unpaid and now marked as paid. So that's the first end-to-end demo, and that showed AI extract to get both the vendor name and the invoice amount. And then it used one of our human in the loop capabilities, the blocking task, for the invoice to get paid by the finance team, and then the record in SmartSuite to be automatically updated. I have 2 more demos. In the interest of time, because I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A, I've already pre-built these demos, so it won't be quite as step-by-step, but I'll still walk you through the spirit behind them and show you what they look like in action. Let me go back to the list of all of my playbooks. The next demo I want to show you is about logging emails that you've received into your CRM. The spirit here is like when you receive an email from an external domain, you want to check, do I already have an entry from this domain in my CRM? If so, I might want to create a new activity that shows that they emailed me. And if I don't have a record in my CRM for this already, I may want to add one. But I probably don't want to add a new record in my CRM for every single incoming email, because that's going to pollute my CRM with a lot of contexts that are not actually people I can sell my product to. And so that's another example of where we think a human in the loop step can be really valuable to decide if a new contact merits inclusion in your CRM. So let me walk you through the simple setup I have in SmartSuite and then the Relay playbook I've created to execute on this. So I'm going to switch to a different SmartSuite solution. It's a very simple CRM. It has a table for companies with a domain, a company name, and the associated account executive. It has a table for contacts, right now with 1 entry, which is my Relay account with an email address and name. It has an activities table where you can see any recent activities, whether it's an email or a call or a meeting. And then for the next demo, we'll also use a users table, which represents users of the product. But for this demo, we're going to be looking at the contacts table and the activities table, because we're going to look up if we have a contact, and then we're going to add an activity in the activities table that links to that contact. So let me show you how it works in Relay. Once again, we set up an email received trigger. In this case, I'm going to use a different sample email. Let me find a sample email that I want to use. Yeah, I think I wanted to use this question from Relay, which is a concocted email I wrote. Let me see. So I'm going to, oops, sorry. The Zoom little person window of myself keeps getting in the way of the UI, so I have to move it to the other side of the screen. And so I want to trigger it for specific emails. And let's say, just to make this demo work, I want to say the message contains question. And so now you're going to see that it would trigger for this question from Relay email, and I can see the content of that email directly in the trigger preview, so I know what I'm working with. Then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go look up in our contacts table in SmartSuite that I just showed you and see if there's a contact with the same email address as the sender of this incoming email. So you can see we can easily reference the data field of the sender email, and it shows me that in this specific example, it's Jacob@Relay.app, so I have some confidence that it's the right thing. And then we give you a couple options. For example, this is always tricky with a get step or a find step, which, okay, what if it doesn't turn anything up? And there are a few different cases where that may, in some cases, not turning anything up could be a real problem because it means your data is wrong and incomplete and you actually want it to fail. In this case, not finding an existing contact in our context table is totally fine and expected in many cases. So if no records are found, I want to hit continue. If no record being found was an indication of an error, I would want to switch this to fail. Similarly, I do want to keep my contacts table unique. So because the email address should be a unique identifier in the contacts table. So if more than one record is found with the same email, I do want to fail because that means that I've done something wrong in managing my contacts table and I want to fix it before this run proceeds. Then I've created a path in Relay based on whether this get step found a contact or not. Let me just quickly show you how that was configured. I created a path with 2 variants. The first variant is if a contact exists. The second variant is if a contact does not exist. And in this case, I decided to follow the contacts exist path if the record is set, which means I was able to find something within SmartSuite. And if I wasn't, I go down the contact doesn't exist path. If I'm in the contact exists path, super simple. I create a new activity in the activities table. I mark it as type email. I again use our fancy AI autofill to summarize the content of the mail body and put it into the summary in the SmartSuite table, and then I'm done. If the contact does not exist, it's a little bit trickier because I have to make a decision. And in this case, we've done another nested path, which is deciding to create a contact or to skip. And I'll show you that we made this a manual path or a human in the loop path because we want to use some human judgment to decide whether I should create a contact or skip in this case. So if I, the person responsible for this judgment, decides to create a contact, then we're going to automatically create a contact in SmartSuite with the right information and automatically create an activities record. So now let me go, because I want to show you that path, let me clean out the contacts table so it won't exist. And I'll also clean out the activities table. Okay, so once again, I'll show you a test run of this in action with that sample email that I sent from my Relay account. It says, "Hi, Katie, I've been setting up an account in your product and I wasn't able to figure out how to pay you. I'd really like to because I love the product so much. Can you help me?" Totally realistic email. We get these all the time. And so let me show you a test run with that example. Okay, I'll start the run. And you're going to see it's looking for a record where the email address is jacob@relay.app. It's not going to find it. So now it's waiting for a path selection. And I can either select this path from within Relay, or once again, I can go to Slack. And oh, shoot, I forgot in this automation to configure the information like the sender name and the display name, which I would add. But what it shows me here in Slack is, do you want to add a contact in our CRM for, imagine it says Jacob and then jacob@relay.app. And I can say, yeah, Jacob seems like a good prospect. Let me create a contact. Once that path is selected, you'll see it picks up the steps in Relay where it creates a contacts record with that email address and that name. And then it creates an activity record with the contact, the type, and the AI summary of our email. Jacob is inquiring about how to pay for the product as he loves it so much. Reasonable one-sentence summary of that very simple email. And if I go over to SmartSuite, you can see that the contact was correctly added and the activity was correctly added. Now, these are contrived examples. You might want to have additional notes that someone adds as a human in the loop. You might want to have additional fields. But the idea here is to demonstrate that it's very easy to configure the right things being sent into SmartSuite with or without human in the loop judgment. I want to show one more use case. I'll speed up a little bit for this one. And the last use case I want to show is going to showcase roles for a multiplayer use case. And so the use case I want to demonstrate there is sending a personalized welcome email to a new user that joins their product. This is actually something that came up when I was talking with Avi in preparation for this, where SmartSuite has this, we have this, many other companies have this, where you have lots of users signing up. And for some of them, you want to just give them a generic welcome email, excited to have you on the product, come talk to us if you need help. But if you're getting an email that's an expansion in one of your important accounts, you probably want the account executive for that account to be dealing with that email because they have a lot of context on what's going on with that account, and they can give a better personalized welcome to the new person that's just signed up. So I'm going to show you an example of how you can do that sort of human in the loop use case with Relay across multiple roles or multiple people playing a role in the workflow. Again, I'm going to use that same very simple CRM table that I showed in SmartSuite. The trigger in this case is when a new record is created in the users table. I'm going to assume that this users table is somehow populated by a webhook or a form or however else you would get users into the SmartSuite table. Then what we're going to do when we get a new user record, we're going to look up in our companies table, is there a domain that matches the domain of that email address? And we have a nice little formatter field that automatically will extract the domain from an incoming email address to make this easy. And then we're in two scenarios. If there is an AE, we want to have the AE send a personalized welcome email to this new user. If there's no AE, we want to send our default welcome email. And so how do we know who the AE is? If you go back into the SmartSuite table, you'll see that for every domain, I have an AE assigned. And the way I can do this in Relay is I create a role called AE that's going to be populated automatically in this workflow. And you can see here that it's auto-assigned with the lightning bolt. And let me quickly show you how that worked. You can either add a default assignee, like I want Katie to always be the AE, or you can assign it dynamically based on something that's going on in this other system. In this case, we want to read from the SmartSuite company record who the AE is for that company. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to look at the SmartSuite record that was found in step 1, and I'm going to select the AE. And so what that means is that if a record with that domain is found, it's going to automatically pull the right AE from that domain. If no AE is found, it's just going to go into the generic flow. So now let me show you a test of this in action. As you can see, we already have an entry in our companies table for Relay.app with the account executive being Katie, which is this demo account I'm using to showcase Relay. And so let me again create a test run. I think I created a new user in the users table representing myself. So I'm going to use this sample data as the test run. Create the test run. Again, I've moved over into the run view where we can see a running instance. Start the run. You're going to see that it has successfully fetched a domain where the record is relay.app, the AE is Katie. You'll see that the AE has been assigned to be Katie because it picked that up from the record. And now we're in what's called a double check step. And this is where Katie gets to personalize the content of the email before it goes out. Once again, I've been notified in Slack and it says, this is the email that you're going to send. Do you want to say looks good, send now? Or do you want to open it in Relay to edit it? In this case, I want to open it in Relay to edit it. So here's the email. Hi, Jacob. I'm excited to see you signed up for Relay. And I want to add some personal context that shows how deeply I know the account. I know you've already automated many of your sales workflows, and I'm excited to see you expand to marketing, for example. And then I can say, looks good, send now. And it's going to send the email from Katie to, in this case, also me, but my real Relay account, Jacob at relay.app. And right on time, that is the end of the 3 demos. So the first one showed you how to automatically get invoices into SmartSuite. The second one showed you how to easily log activities and create new contacts with human judgment if applicable. And the third showed you how to send a personalized welcome email from a role on your team, in this case, the AE for the relevant account. So with that, I'll stop sharing and open it up to Q&A.
Wow, amazing, mind blown, times 20. There's so many things to love here. Like just the simple UI, the AI summarizer, like the built-in AI summarizer, grabbing like the vendor name and amount, extracting that from the email. I wish you could have seen all the comments and interactions in the chat while you were presenting, because I think the excitement is in the air. Quite a few questions that came in, and I'm
Great.
going to go through them one by one. And as we continue to go through them, folks, if you have any other questions, continue to drop them in the Q&A. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can.
Yep.
The first question for you, Jacob, comes from Jay. Jay is asking, thinking of no-code solution for my business. Will this have enough functionality versus Make? Some of my apps just have API functionality.
So first, Relay has robust support for webhooks, both webhooks to trigger Relay playbooks and calling external webhooks. So even if a product doesn't have an API that we can publicly integrate with, or it's an internal tool, we have a pretty robust webhook setup that you can use to integrate a wide variety of internal and external tools. So that's quite feature complete. I would say there are 2 gaps between Relay and Make that, of course, we're trying to close as quickly as possible. But the first is that Make will natively integrate with a much wider variety of tools. They've been around for much longer. I don't remember their latest number of integrations. Maybe it's 1,500 or something. We have 71. Now, we've tried to pick the 71 that we think will be most applicable to most of you. And I already noticed from the attendees of the webinar, some of you have already interacted with our team, and we move very quickly with new integrations when they're requested. So we're going to close that gap as quickly as we can over time. And if you commit to working with us, we'll commit to building the integrations that you need. And the second is, there are a few more advanced features in Make that we don't have yet. For example, we don't have the ability to call custom code. We don't have a looping or an iterator construct yet. So if those are critical for a subset of your workflows, you wouldn't yet be able to move those workflows over to Relay. But as you can imagine, with both integration depth and those kind of advanced technical workflow features, we're closing the gap as quickly as we can.
Phenomenal. Okay, amazing. The next question is, does AI extract work with other languages? Example, French and German.
I've never tried. I've never tried. We'll test it out and get back to you. Conceptually, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. There's a lot of, we basically make a call to the appropriate OpenAI API under the hood, usually GPT 3.5. And I've seen just from my reading that there's examples of GPT 3.5 working surprisingly well in a multilingual context. So we'll test it out and let you know if it works, or you feel free to test it out and file a bug with us if it doesn't, because that is something that we should, in theory, be able to support.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds good. But you're using GPT-3, it sounds like.
Yeah, like if you can, and we do the way the AI autofill features, whether it's extract or generate, summarize, work, is we do a bunch of the prompt engineering work for you. So we pass in all the context of the workflow, we pass in all the data that we have access to, so that all you have to do is write that 3-word hint instead of having to write the entire prompt. But in theory, anything that you can do by going to the ChatGPT playground and doing it, we should be able to do as well with Relay AI autofill, because it's powered by the same underlying APIs.
That's awesome. Okay, amazing. And next question is from Patrick. Can it update SmartSuite records using the AI extract, being able to find a record with matching criteria like matching email or address and upload the attachment into the proper field?
This is a good question. Can you use AI extraction to get the primary key for the get step? I believe we don't yet support that, but it's actually a very reasonable request. So I'll note it with our team.
Amazing. Sounds like we sparked a good idea for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll wait to see that implemented. Jangan is asking, does Relay work with linked records? For example, if vendor was a linked record rather than a text input, would it be able to grab the linked record?
Yes.
Linked
So
orbit.
I breezed through it, but in the last demo I showed with the contacts table and the activities table, there was, let me just share my screen again so I can show it to you live. So in this very simple example, I had in contacts and activities a linked record. The contact is actually a linked record to the other table. And the way I did that in Relay is in that example, let me pull it up. In that example, I looked up the record in the contacts table, and then I could use that linked record to create a new activities entry. So if I'm interpreting the question correctly, yes, we can look up a record, and then you can use that linked record in the construction or updating of records in another table.
Amazing. Okay. Next question is coming in from Caitlin. Your team has been amazingly on top of questions and suggestions in the 48 hours or so I've been using Relay. I would like to see more advanced Google Drive integrations. Is there any way to automatically grant access to a folder or file in Drive? Bonus points if we can assign permissions and an expiration too.
I believe the answer is that yes, we do support share in Drive. I'm not sure we can support the full range of access controls that Google offers in that menu. I don't know if they have an API for expiration, for example, but let me just quickly, once again, show you in the product. Let's say, let me go back to that invoices example, because maybe I want to save the invoice to Google Drive. If I go into Google Drive, yeah, so we have the ability to upload files, and then I could upload this from the mail attachments. And now we might only have this internally, but I believe we have the ability to share a file, but I'm actually not seeing it right now. Caitlin, I think we'll have to get back to you. I was sure that we had that, but it appears that we don't for some reason. So you're already in touch with our team. So let's follow up. We can definitely, sharing access to a folder and file is totally reasonable. Permissions and expiration, we'll have to look into whether the API allows that for us.
Amazing. Okay, sounds good. And Ray is asking, hey Ray. Ray is asking, how would you set up Relay to pull any emails that have tasks and load them into SmartSuite, either by AI extracting incoming, outgoing emails for action items or some kind of flag trigger?
So having worked in this space for a long time, I will say that AI extraction of tasks from email is a very hard problem. We tried to build this so many times at Google with like very advanced machine learning models and struggled to very reliably pull out the right tasks and action items. And so in practice, I would recommend having some sort of human in the loop component to check on this. The way you would do it in Relay is you would have an incoming email, and then you'd create a new SmartSuite record, and then you would AI autofill that with a task or a list of tasks that have been pulled out with AI extract. But my guess is for this to work really well in practice, you're going to want some human in the loop component. So Ray, I'd say this is actually a great use case. I'd love to work with you on this. So send me an email afterwards and we'll see if we can co-design something that meets your needs.
Okay, amazing. And Jacob, I'm just curious, like just searching for the keyword tasks wouldn't be enough to,
Yeah. So if you have a really nicely formatted email that's like action items, boom, like AI extract will be pretty good at
okay,
that. If you have a more subtle task where in one sentence in the depth of the email, I say, hey, Avi, can you send me the presentation from the... I don't have confidence that AI systems today can fully reliably parse that out. So it
got it.
depends on how structured the email is. Now,
Okay,
if it's a thing where you have a workflow as post-meeting action items or from a CRM where it's really structured, then we can probably do something automated there.
got it. But I also noticed that one of the triggers in Relay would be label added. So that could be like a manual. If you apply a label to an incoming or outgoing email,
Exactly. So I
process
have a
and
workflow.
summarize the email.
I have a workflow that I use myself that's related, which is I get a lot of cold sales emails from people selling everything under the sun. And I've tried a few times to create automated classifiers that will detect these cold emails, but it's actually surprisingly hard to tell a really good cold email. Like people are really good at this, right? Like it's really hard to tell a really good cold email from a warm one. So I decided to have a manual step at the front end, which is I label something as cold email. And then once I label it cold email, the Relay automations can kick into action to reply no thanks and unsubscribe from their list or whatever else I want to do as a result. I think I just reply no
Got it.
thanks and then archive the email automatically. So we've seen this as a very common use case where if you haven't been able to figure out a great way to, with AI, classify the incoming email, you can just assign a label and then tag them yourself.
Okay, amazing. Sounds good. Hope that answers your question, Ray. And sounds like you can get in touch with the Relay team afterwards. Caitlin is asking, I did notice that the address field type from SmartSuite does not seem to register in the choices under data in Relay. Use case, I was trying to send an automated email to confirm students' addresses and include their current entry in the email.
I'm totally reasonable use case, and I'm sure you're right that we just have a gap where we didn't correctly import that particular data type from SmartSuite. So yeah, send us a message and we'll add that very quickly.
Okay, sounds good. Easy enough. John is asking, what other email clients are supported?
We also do support Outlook. With a caveat, we only support sign in with Google right now. And if you are in a Microsoft Exchange workplace where your identity is governed by Microsoft, you can't yet use Relay. If you have a Google account and then you also have a Microsoft Outlook email, we can do some email related automations. But the TLDR right now is we basically only support Gmail and Google Workspace accounts for most users in most cases. But John, feel free to send me a message and we'll see if we can support your particular use case.
Okay, sounds good. And Dave is asking, does this work with SmartSuite's built-in email processing, where SmartSuite has like email from record in the same area of the comments? Or do you recommend bypassing the SmartSuite tool and just use Relay?
I don't know enough about SmartSuite email processing to give you. Maybe Avi, you can answer this one.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious if Relay is pulling this data now, and if not, maybe Relay can pull it. But from the communication center in SmartSuite, so in the comments area where you can comment and tag someone, you can also draft an email and like automatically include like a email address that was mentioned in the record or not, and that outgoing email gets sent from like an alias, a SmartSuite alias, and the replies come right back into the record. So it's essentially a common stream, but it's meant for external communications with
Right.
emails, etc.
So two comments based on that. First, one thing that I was going to note, I'm glad you reminded me, is we just launched yesterday Relay triggers and actions that interact with SmartSuite comments. And I don't believe Zapier or Make have these, where you can trigger a Relay playbook based on a comment being added in SmartSuite, or you can add a comment programmatically based on something else happens. So I wanted to note that. And then second, in Relay's incoming email functionality works best when hooked up to a specific person's mailbox. And Relay's outgoing email send via Gmail works best when it's sent from a specific human's Gmail mailbox, or you can use an email marketing tool. We have integrations with many, Drip, Lemlist, etc. I can think of on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, you might be better to use SmartSuite's native feature. In some cases, you might be better off to use Gmail. For example, if you have a support alias type use case and you want to have every outcoming email come from that support thing and new responses automatically get added as comments in the right SmartSuite place, the functionality you just described, Avi, sounds really good for that. If you want to have a personalized email sent from an individual's Gmail that exactly mirrors what it would have looked like for them to send an email themselves, that's when you should use Relay.
Okay, amazing. And we have an anonymous attendee asking, is
Ooh.
there an additional fee for the use of AI? Is there any limits on usage?
We have two ways of using AI in Relay. The first is the one that I showed you with that inline AI autofill that talks to GPT 3.5 on the back end. That is included in the price with no limits. With an asterisk, don't abuse it. If we see some like obvious pattern of abuse, we'll have to shut it down. But we have not yet had a customer that has used it to the point that has raised any concerns for us. So give it your best shot. The second AI integration we have, which is more similar to Zapier and Makes, is you can make a raw OpenAI call. You pick your API. And in that case, you have to bring your own OpenAI account and it'll be billed to you. So if you want to use GPT-4, for example, or you want to engineer your own complex prompt, that would be more similar to the Zapier mechanism or the Make mechanism where you have to pay for your own OpenAI usage.
Got it. Okay, amazing. And Patrick is asking, can the reverse of these processes work? So could SmartSuite records be created or updated in the Relay app, plus AI extract would summarize, send email updates to users, or transfer files outside sources, or use the human in the workflow judgment for external non-SmartSuite users for judgment?
So first, in general, the reverse of all these processes would work. So anything that triggers off an incoming email and makes something in SmartSuite, you could just as easily trigger on something in SmartSuite and send an email using the appropriate human-in-the-loop components or the AI extraction. The last point you mentioned is a really interesting one, which is external users having to put something in with their judgment. We actually have an experimental feature that we're working on right now that we're keeping a bit hush, but it basically lets you create a very lightweight task or form that you can send over email to a non-Relay user or a non-SmartSuite user. So they don't have to create an account. They don't have to log in. They just get like a unique landing page with the ability to fill in some information or check off a task. And then that propagates through to the Relay workflow. So Patrick, if you're interested, I'd love to learn more about use cases where you need, it sounds like users outside of your business or outside of your domain to input information to you. Let me know and we'll see if we can use it using this cool new experimental feature we're working on support you.
Amazing. Sounds like you've got so many things coming soon. Caitlin is asking, what is your future vision for Relay? I see so much exciting potential, but I wonder, would you mind sharing with us where your vision is headed?
Ooh, that's a big question halfway through the Q&A. Thank you, Caitlin. So here's how I think about it as a whole. Most of us spend most of our time doing some versions of the same thing over and over again. Repeated work is critical in basically every function in every business and often defines how good you are. Like the best marketing teams are good at running repeated campaigns. The best HR teams are good at repeatedly recruiting, interviewing, and onboarding candidates. The best sales teams are good at repeatedly getting the contracts out on time. And I think right now, workflow automation tools have scratched only the very surface of the repeated things that we can help with. Because basically, if you look at Zapier or you look at Make, they're fully automated. They can only capture things that are exactly the same every time, have exactly the same automated trigger, and have exactly the same automated action. And I think that with the advances in AI, plus the ability to layer a human in the loop, you can support a much wider variety of basically anything you need to do repeatedly over time as part of your business. And so the goal of Relay is to be like the go-to place that either automates or assists with everything you do over and over again, which maybe, I don't know, for me is maybe like 70% of my job. And the goal is for us to flexibly combine automation, AI with human judgment so that we automate away as much as possible, but still keep your judgment there for the things where it's really needed. And then consequently, I also think the workflow automation market is going to grow in the same way because people are going to realize that there's such a broader set of use cases to which you can apply automation if you can also layer on AI and human judgment. So I'm hoping to get there.
Wow. 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 Okay. Yes. articulated. I could say the one thing that really got me excited when I first saw Relay is the human in the loop. I think that's such a critical component of any automation platform because, like you're saying, there's always going to be that. At some point, there's human in the loop, and if that's where the automation has to stop,
Yeah,
that's a
and
gap.
and
If that's
and
where the automation is just having like a pause and then it continues after, is really
yeah, and as exciting as the new developments in AI are, and I've been following them my whole career and working on them in some contexts, there are still not that many high stakes production use cases of sending something to a client or producing some content where you don't want to have a human double checking that the AI did it. And I think we're going to be in that. AI is going to become more and more capable over time, but I think there's always going to be use cases that require human judgment or human context.
fair enough. Okay, but quick question we have over here from an anonymous attendee: is Front App one you work with?
Very timely. We actually just finished our front implementation, and we can't yet turn it on because we're going through the review process on their side. We literally kicked that off like yesterday. So depending on how many days it takes for them to approve us, it will be like order of days available. And I will say our front integration is really deep. Like it covers everything you could possibly want to do in front. And so we'd love to have you test it out as soon as it goes live. So feel free to send me an email.
Awesome, sounds good. And Ray has a follow-up question. Will Microsoft Outlook and Teams integration be coming in the foreseeable future? And we have another
Yeah,
follow-up.
next question seems to be the same.
Yeah,
We don't yet have a time frame. It'll depend in part on customer demand. If you two and many others send me emails saying we really need this, then we'll accelerate it. I think I can confidently say it's not going to be in the next 3 months, but so don't be waiting on pins and needles for it. But I'd like to think that within a year we'll have it. So somewhere between 3 months and a year. And then,
okay.
depending on
Well,
customer,
everyone spam Jacob's email.
yeah, depending on customer demand, we can decide to accelerate or delay that.
There you go. Everyone set up Relay automations to send
Yeah.
daily emails to Jacob asking.
From your personal Gmail account.
But I guess we've had 3 requests for it already, John, Ray, and Oscar. Okay, next question we have over here from an anonymous attendee. I wonder if it's the same anonymous
Yeah.
attendee.
These are some hard-hitting questions from anonymous. Yeah.
Where is Relay hosted? Do you have ISO or SOC 2?
Yes, we're hosted on AWS. We have SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, and we don't have any of the ISO certifications yet, but we do have SOC 2 Type 2, and we're happy to send you the certificate if needed. So far, compliance has not been a hurdle for us, even with very large customers. Like we have a couple of public fintech companies that are using Relay in pockets. In some cases, we have had to go through an additional security review because they have their own vendor security review process. And then that puts you into sort of a custom agreement with us. We can also support custom DPAs. So the online self-serve answer is, yep, use our terms. We're SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. The offline answer is, if you have a more complex need, reach out to me.
Awesome. Sounds good. Fair enough. Isaac has a question over here. Since you demoed a lot of interactivity with Slack, are there any other communication platforms that you guys support, i.e. Discord?
Right now, only Slack. We've had requests for Microsoft Teams, as previously shown. We've had requests for Discord, and we've had requests for Google Chat as well. We have not yet built any of those, but again, votes to my email are influential.
Amazing. Okay. And it seems like a great way to close off with the final, I guess not so much of a question, but Sonara says, I really think it's so much better than Zapier. Thanks. Jacob, how can people get in
I'm
touch with you?
screenshotting that.
How can
Thanks
people
so
get in
much.
touch with you?
I'm at Jacob@Relay.app. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And as Caitlin and a few others have seen, if you sign up for Relay, we have a variety of support mechanisms that you can use to interact with our team. We have a live chat in the product. We can set up joint Slack channels. We're always available at support@Relay.app. So there are many ways to reach me and to reach the team.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jacob, for joining and integrating with SmartSuite. I think folks loving it and looking forward to hearing from you soon. And definitely let us know when you start supporting Microsoft, because that seems to be the highest list on the priority over here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much, Avi. This is a lot of fun.
Take care.
See you. Bye.